So today we're talking about eclipses because it's eclipse season. There's always two eclipse seasons a year, and they contain either one solar eclipse and one lunar eclipse. But occasionally there's a solar eclipse and two lunar eclipses, and every once in a while there's an extra solar eclipse that sneaks into those seasons. But they're always about approximately 6 months from each other as they, as it goes around multiple years, those 6 months start to move around. And I'll talk about that. So I want to start with talking about why are eclipses so powerful? And so I want you, don't answer, you don't have to answer right now, but I want you to think for a minute because I want you to know if you have an answer in your head about why eclipses are so powerful. And I'm just going to give you a few seconds to think. And then I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you the answer, but I want to know if you had an answer first. Why is an eclipse powerful? First of all, it's because the sun and the moon are involved. The sun and the moon are always involved in an eclipse. And Kriyananda said that the sun is an external amplifier. The sun amplifies things in the physical realm. It's our outer world. And the moon is an internal amplifier. So it amplifies things like our feelings, our emotions, and even all the thought processes really that are going on inside our head, our inner conversation and all that type of thing. When you have an eclipse or a lunation, a new moon or full moon, those new moons and full moons are powerful because the sun and the moon are involved. Either in a new moon, the sun and the moon are conjunct, and in a full moon, the sun and the moon are in opposition to each other, right? What's different about an eclipse and what makes it even more powerful is that the sun and the moon are not only conjunct by longitudinal degree, they're in the same degree like the one that's coming up that's in the sun and the moon are both in 28 degrees of Aquarius, but they're also if it's a conjunction, if it's a solar eclipse, they're conjunct by declination, which means how north or south they are of the celestial equator. And if it's a lunar eclipse, they're opposed with the sun and the moon on opposite sides of the celestial equator in terms of north or south. So the orbits aren't even, like it's not, even though everything in our solar system is sort of on a plane, the Earth and the moon are like skewed to that plane. So they go north or south of the celestial equator. So you have a conjunction by degree and you have conjunction by declination. So you've got in the eclipse, dot, 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 and an eclipse happens. So there that's like two aspects with the sun and the moon, if you want to say it that way. So that makes an eclipse even more powerful. I think another thing that makes the eclipses powerful, if you want to talk about it in a more mystical way, is all the symbols that relate to the sun and the moon, and to an eclipse. All the symbols you could just say, just it's light, and then we have darkness, and then light again. Ah. So that's a symbol. That's a symbol that everybody observes when we're having an eclipse. So that has some power to it. And then all the stories from olden times, ancient times, or um, traditional people's view of the eclipse, whether it's the dragon is eating the sun or some other type of thing, and in a solar eclipse. So you want to think about if you have any symbolic relationships to eclipse. I mean, some people love to go outside and watch an eclipse. There's other traditional people, I think, especially in the U.S. Native people, that they go inside. I don't know if it's hiding out or if it's performing a ritual inside when the eclipse is occurring. And I have one person in my family who loves to he goes traveling to eclipses so that he can watch and observe the eclipse. He's an astronomer and he loves to do that. So think about what your feeling is about eclipses, because that's part of our inner world, our inner work. So that's what makes an eclipse more powerful. But you can also ask the question, when is an eclipse more powerful? And when an eclipse is more powerful, it's when it is conjunct or opposed or squared a transiting outer planet. So if an eclipse is conjunct Uranus, you know there's going to be more to that transiting eclipse than usual. But especially for all of us, you're watching for it to be conjunct or opposed. Karina, I always say conjunct or opposed, but I also say or squared to any natal planet. So if you have the eclipse conjunct or squared or opposed, and of course, as we look at the charts, I'll remind you to also look to see when it's because wherever it is in your chart, it's conjunct a house. So you want to see what house it is falling in when an eclipse conjunct your house, conjuncts a house in your chart. The other thing that I think is important to do as just our personal work that we do is to look back at similar eclipses. Eclipses, solar eclipses, or eclipses in general have a 19-year cycle, but sometimes you look back and you say, oh, well, this one isn't 19 years, but it was close. So actually, the one that took place on February 15th, 2018 was at 27 degrees Aquarius. There was a solar eclipse. So if you have your journal from 2018 and you can go back, or if something actually in February of 2018, you can remember, oh, something, really happened, something actually happened, then you want to watch even more carefully this particular eclipse and say, oh, did something happen? Again, especially if it's conjunct something in your own natal chart. So and the other thing about what makes eclipses so powerful is the duration. So a solar eclipse we talk about it in a number of different durations, like a solar eclipse coming up, you see it in your chart. And when does it activate? Is it a few days on either side? Is there an activation, or is it like weeks or sometimes I think it's like a month on either side, but I'm always watching for those symbols. So if you watch for symbols and you know that that eclipse is coming up, you want to watch for those type of symbols. Um, but there's also the other ways of looking at eclipses is that they create change in your life for a year. So some change happens, sometimes right at that eclipse, but sometimes it just symbolizes something that's coming up. Like an eclipse in your 10th house might symbolize a job change in the year ahead. In your second house, something with money for the year, will come up for the year ahead. So a change in how money comes into your life, for example, for good or for bad. It really depends on your own natal chart, or as we don't like to say bad, we say for good or for challenging. If something is going to be challenging that, but it's going to be, it, something's going to be changing in your life in that area. So wherever it falls in your chart or whatever planet it falls on or makes a conjunct square opposed to will show some change. And so you want to be watching for that because that's a year. So you're watching for a year in that eclipse, but another eclipse, solar eclipse, comes up 6 months later. And so then you've got cycles that are happening, cycles of change that are happening. And there's always something astrological happening. But you want to look at it because the eclipse is a solar eclipse, especially, is a time when you can plant a seed. Just like we talk about it, every new moon is a new beginning. A solar eclipse is a very powerful new beginning. So for us, those of us who are mystically inclined or magically inclined, if you want to see it that way, you do a little ritual or you write it down. Writing things down is a ritual. You guys know what I mean. You write it down and you say, this is the change I want to be. What is it? What was the code? Be the change that you want to see in the world. This is the change I want to be so that I see it in the world. And uh, we want to activate those powerful times because that's helpful to us. It's like it helps us. It's because we're trying to have more, my keywords for this year, focus and concentration. We're supposed to have more focus and concentration. We don't want to just, no, no. You are welcome. And there's nothing wrong with just living your life every day. But if you're a Kriya yogi, you're really supposed to be a little more conscious and you're supposed to say, put more energy into what you want. Or as somebody said many years ago, it wasn't Kriyananda, it was a book about what you focus on expands. It was one of those positive thinking books, I think. But he said, whatever you focus on expands. So you want to think about, well, what do you want to expand? It's not so much about what you want to get rid of, although sometimes when you have a change, it's what you want to get rid of, but it's what you focus on expands. So make a decision or just like write down your key word, like in Eric Klein's new book about forgiveness. His key phrase is aham prema. I am loving awareness. But you can have whatever phrase you want. Aham brahmasmi. I'm the creative principle, and this is why it's important because we're always creating. And I may talk about that more next week. But anyway, that's so there's so you eclipses are important. That's really all I want to say. The lunar eclipses too. Solar eclipse, this is where things are activating for a year. Lunar eclipse, this is where things are activating for a month. Now, I'm going to put up the charts. And so why are we looking at the charts? I will tell you in a minute as soon as I get the chart up. Now, you can all see this chart, right? Like if somebody nod their head, so you can see the chart on the screen, right? This is the solar eclipse. It's February 17th, 2026, 6 o'clock in the morning, almost exactly 6 o'clock, 6:01 in the morning. And this is a flat chart. It has no houses because you all live in different places. And I didn't want to give you a chart that was confusing. I just want you to see the signs the planets are in and not the houses and where they are. So the reason, like I said, the reason you get the chart is you want to see, here's the solar eclipse. I mean, here's the longitudinal degrees of the solar eclipse, 28 Aquarius, 49 minutes. And you want to look in your chart and just, whether it's electronically or whether you have a paper copy of your chart, which can be really helpful, just draw it in. I have a paper copy of my chart at the beginning of the year, and I always like mark in the eclipses. And you don't have to do it right now; you can do it later. But this is you. But if you know your chart, think about what house does this fall in, and what sort of changes can you imagine? So if you've been working with your chart for many years, then you know a little bit about who you are and how you react to things, or who you are and how you take advantage of things. So, for example, I always think about the second house, I guess, but if something like this is in your second house, this eclipse might make you think about like, well, how can I make more money? Or how do I want to invest my money? What do I want to do with my money? That's a second house thing. Or, what do I want to do with all my stuff? Do I want more stuff? Do I want less stuff? So just in general, it activates that house. If it's in your eighth house, you might think about other people's money. 10th house is career, fourth house, if the eclipse falls in your fourth house, sometimes people want to move or they want to change something significant about the home that they're living in or the place that they're living. So you want to think about that in advance because depending on the aspects in your chart, it might have something to do with, it has to do with your decision making, and you want to, we Kriya yogis want to be wise decision makers. This is the advantage of the extra information that we get from astrology. Is it wise to do something right now? So when I look at this chart, I would be looking to see, is there anything opposed to this eclipse? Is there anything square to this eclipse? Let's take a look. I hope you're looking because I'm drawing it right now. What is square to this eclipse? It's Uranus. Now, Uranus, we can talk about this in the discussion too, because maybe you can tell me some experiences. But Uranus just made a station point on February 4th, which was Wednesday, I think. And it was one of those days. Yeah, so we're still in the aura of this Uranus stationary point. So if the eclipse, for example, um, activated your second house of money and say, is this a good time to make an investment? And you go like, well, I don't know, is this a sudden decision? Is it anyway, there's lots of questions you can ask yourself about the decision. Is this a sudden decision? Is this something I've been planning? Is something stable? So if it was in your fourth house and you said, I think I'll move to Alaska, then you look at, oh, this eclipse is squared Uranus. This is making me feel very restless and like electric. And maybe I should wait a few weeks before I make a final decision, and not like throw all my things into a trailer and sell my house and, go to Alaska. So you want to look for how likely, what sort of things, just with your imagination, do you imagine would be like this? So for me, I would say for people to be careful with electronics, you know. So if you're thinking about meditation, I've been very, because the eclipse, we're not quite at the eclipse yet, but that's why I want to have you do it in advance. But with the Uranus station point, I sit down to meditate, and all I can do is think thoughts. It's like there's no space between my thoughts with the Uranus stationary point. So, and every time I go like, okay, it's Uranus, we're going to calm our thoughts down now. But so you want to think about what for you, or then you're looking over here too. So you've got another house to look at with this eclipse. So this is coming up. And when I say it's coming up, so it's February 17th. It's not for, like a couple weeks or a week, or I don't know what date it is. I don't always know what day it is anymore. But it's February 17th, so we have some time. But as you have to watch for yourself as it's approaching, as it's going closer, closer, closer to the eclipse. Not only do we have the station point, but then you go like, okay, well, we're getting closer and closer, closer to the eclipse. And are you feeling more hyper? Are your thoughts going around? Then you go like, okay, well, what do I need to do? I often talk about like our spiritual toolbox. We've learned so many techniques over the years for calming down. And I think last week or the other week, I was talking about when you have this Uranus station point, or when you have something that's like Uranus, it's really making a person hyper, not you, of course, but just a person. Then you can suggest that then instead of silent meditation, maybe they do chanting, something to to drown out the thoughts, I guess, but more like just like, chanting is pranayama, chanting is breathing, a combination of breathing and affirmation of the mantra and all this stuff. So out loud can be helpful because, or walking around while you're, or walking meditation or something, so that if you need movement, if you're not calming down, if you really honestly are sitting and you're not getting into a more quiet, peaceful state, do for the duration of this aspect, do a different technique or add a different technique in that you find is more calming or soothing, or gives you a break from hyper energy. So it's square to this. So this is what I look at when I look at the chart. So I always look at the chart. In the chart of a lunation and the chart of an eclipse, let's tell you about the what's going on in the rest of the chart. So it's really important to take a look at over here, that here's the Saturn Neptune conjunction, which is coming up. This is on the February 17th. 3 days later, on the 20th, there's the Saturn Neptune conjunction. So this is an important factor in eclipse. It's not an aspect in particular to the eclipse, right? It's just really like it's like a semi-sextile, if you want to say that, semi-sextile to the eclipse, but it's not really in a like a major aspect, but it's in time. So I talk about that we have conjunctions in space, but we also have conjunctions in time. And this is a conjunction in time, right? Because it's happening at the same time, in the same time framework as the eclipse. I've already talked at length in other talks about the Saturn Neptune conjunction, but it has to do with facing reality. So, with the unexpected changes of plan that come up with Uranus squaring the eclipse can bring something like, facing reality in just really quickly, something, because I talked last year about, hey, the Saturn Neptune conjunction means facing reality. But sometimes with Neptune, you just don't know what it is until you know, it just makes itself really, really known. So for us as yogis, I think, this is just my opinion. We just need to do our regular thing, which is to stay awake and aware, have focus and concentration, do our meditation, do our hatha, whatever you do, whatever your tools in your toolbox are for doing that, because things are going to come up that we have to deal with, and we want to say, okay, can we be calm in decision making? Can we, what's triggering? And then, okay, I don't want to talk about this too long because we can do more in our discussion. But I just want to point these things out to you because Kriyananda said that you have to watch for Mars to come up to the eclipse point. But Mars is like right here. It's not conjunct the eclipse, but it's only going to take, let's see, maybe, 15, 20 days for it to come up to this eclipse point. I may have this wrong. I didn't look it up. But when Mars comes up, whatever happened at the time of the eclipse is going to trigger again. And you can see how that plays out. So that's really important to look at the whole chart of a lunation, to look at the whole chart of the eclipse. Let's take a quick look at the lunar eclipse too, just so that you know what's there. Here's the lunar eclipse. It's on March 3rd, 2026, 5:37 a.m. And so that'll be, you have to think about what your local time is, but the chart's the same. That's why I made it a flat chart. So no matter what time the eclipse is, whether it's, in Southeast Michigan or Italy or Southwest, the Southwest of Arizona, wherever you are, the planets are always in the same place. There's no houses in this chart. So this is the lunar eclipse, right? And so it's so we would say the lunar eclipse is in 12 degrees Virgo. It's opposed by the sun in 12 degrees Pisces. So you definitely want to, again, look to see where 12 degrees Virgo is in your chart, what house is in. This is the lunar eclipse. And we can see that this Saturn-Neptune conjunction is still here, with Saturn separating by almost a degree. So hopefully we will have learned and faced into our reality and know what's going on here. But and then again, Mars is quite close, so you'll be watching for, if anything triggers at the lunar eclipse for you, you want to watch for Mars to come up to the sun here at 12 degrees Pisces. So this is what we're looking for in this chart. But it's not the 12 degrees isn't like squared or opposed to everything, even though it's sextile here to Jupiter. We don't talk about the sextiles or the trines that much, even though we got something nice, happening here. But it does mean, so we're not looking. So what I'm saying is a sextile trine may not create a major event in an eclipse, all by itself. It's not something that we're like watching out for. But it's nice to know that there'll be some Jupiter energy that we can pull into at that lunar eclipse, so we can look to see, what we'd like to expand in the month, um, in the month ahead of in the month after the lunar eclipse is how I wanted to say that.